thing. Of course, Sora is checking out your feedback on the meme of the day. But in the meantime, we have one of the most celebrated, amazing, witty, smart, and very eloquent people in the building. I'm talking about the one and only Eli Mwenda. Drum rolls. What's up, how are you, Mr. ManTalk?
I can't complain, man. I'm good. Man.
You're great?
Yeah, good to see you, dude.
You sort of kind of went viral over the weekend because of a conversation you started off this week, but we'll get into that. Let's start off with your journey a little bit.
Go.
Born in Kenya, but then you ended up in the UK where you were born, where you were raised.
Yeah.
So, I mean, tell us the journey about coming from the UK to Nairobi and setting up this amazing series of conversation called ManTalk. How did that happen?
So, yeah, like you said, I left when I was 2 months old. So, literally a tiny baby, went to the UK. So, I came back 3 years ago, coming up to 3 years now. And I've always wanted to have a conversation with people with substance, because I found that, like, online there's so many negative things that are talked about. We wanted to create a space where we can have positive conversations, and especially around men's issues. So me and my co-host Oscar Come, who's now in London, ironically. Ironically now we switched. So yeah, now we basically said, let's try and create a safe space, and it's gone really, really well. It was aimed at men, but now we have lots of women that now listen in, and we're making collaborative conversations with substance.
These kind of conversations, when they are sort of, toxic and stuff, they sort of really get to hit, the Andrew Tate sort of kind of people. Andrews, let's call them that.
Oh wow!
So they sort of end up like hitting when they're toxic, when it's demeaning women.
Exactly.
Why did you decide to go the route that is sort of, I can say, sort of softer and it's more vulnerable? Why is that important for you guys?
I felt like there was a lot of people that I resonated with in my life when I moved here, and I was creating a new group of friends. And what we've basically found is that from having really nice conversations offline, we thought, why can't we translate this online? So I'm very blessed to have a really nice group of guys, and I think we think positively. So we said, there's a lot of men out there that sort of struggle with these issues, and they don't have a spot to come and chat. I think you've come on the podcast yourself.
And I loved it.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah,
it was like therapy, man.
Exactly, yeah. So like people like you, like I'm saying, my friends, and they come on, and you could talk about like some of the struggles you've had. And especially you being a thought leader, now you've got a whole audience of young men that say, okay, I can feel, I can think like this, I can be progressive, and just break the gender norms.
Who are some of the men in your life who have sort of played a huge role in sort of molding you to be the man that you are? And what does it mean to be a man?
That's a very good question. There's so many different definitions, right? I feel like the men that have helped me in my life for sure is my father, 100%. Hi, Dad. My father, obviously, and also my older brother. So I'm a middle child, so I have my dad and my brother. I'll just say those are just hands down, those guys. And then I also look for virtual mentors online, which is what now we've basically tried to be. So I look for guys that are in similar industries, guys that have really good work ethic, things like Dwayne Johnson, like Kevin Hart, those guys there. They show their life and they show the work ethic that it takes to get somewhere. So I look to guys outside of my immediate circle too. Now, what does it mean to be a man? I feel like honesty. And the reason I say honesty is because it takes a lot of bravery to be honest in every situation. Honest with yourself, honest to people that are around you, and just honest to be like an honest person in a society where there's a lot of dishonesty. So I think that's one thing, holding fast and being like, whatever this circumstance is, whatever the environment, I'm going to hold fast to my truth. And the only way you get to those truths is if you talk about things, right? And a lot of guys don't. So that's why it kind of links in now to the...
I mean, I hung out with you in South Africa.
Hey,
throwing it there.
Wow, there it is.
For Spotify. We had a great time together.
Outstanding, man.
But one of the things I realized about you and Oscar is a very interesting relationship. You're literally yin and yang.
Yes, yes, that's my brother.
Sort of complete opposites, but you're very sort of, sort of together. How did that friendship and now that's blossoming into a really great example of that men can be friends and they can help each other, they can grow. How did that happen?
So Oscar is a phenomenal
How did you meet this criminal?
I hope he's listening, because
Oscar is lit.
He's amazing guy. So basically me and Oscar met. Ironically, I was having a meeting about the podcast, and then I bumped into him. We had a mutual friend, and then he said, if you ever need a guest on the podcast, let me know. So at this time, I was doing the podcast with other people, right? And then Oscar came on set once, and I remember we looked at each other, and after we recorded, I just said, you're a very intelligent man. He goes, you're a very intelligent man too. And from then, it ended up now just being me and him doing the podcast. So it's been like one of the best decisions ever. We've got an amazing relationship built from the pod, but I feel like because of the nature of what we're doing, we're talking about substance, we're talking about things, so we've been forced to grow together, and there's nothing like growing with someone to make you stronger. So we're basically like brothers now.
I know, I mean, the sacrifices you had to make from Oscar leaving his job, I mean, now moving to the UK. I mean, what do you feel for you is the biggest sacrifice that you've had to make as a brand on your own, but also as a collective? What do you feel is the biggest sacrifice you guys have to make? Maybe you guys refuse some big gig.
Listen,
you're like, guys, we can't take the brand, but that money.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So, me and Oscar made a very conscious decision when we were starting the pod to say that there's a certain category of brands, I won't say which category, that we won't work with, right? Just a certain type of product. And that's where there's most money, right? And we've basically said, if we want to stick true to our guns, we have to self-fund this. So we've sacrificed money for 2 years being a self-funded podcast. We've sacrificed potential partnerships because we said, if we're going to be an impactful podcast, we need to be able to walk the talk. And by doing that, it means we can't take money from certain places. So taking the long way rather than the short and easy way and the low-hanging fruit, as we always say when we're chatting. So yeah, definitely money has been the biggest one. Like it's expensive to run a podcast, I'll be honest. We're going to get into the conversation around what happened this week, but are there moments where you felt impact, like you've been, maybe it's a message, maybe someone that you met, whether a man or woman, girl or boy, parent, where you felt like this is exactly, you probably were feeling like this is a lot, but you probably, someone said something and you were like, this is exactly why I do ManTalk. And so let me tell you, the amount of interactions we've had, like just being out and about in Nairobi. So for context, when we were building the podcast, me and Oscar never went out. Like we were just in a cocoon, grinding, record, grind. And then we said, listen, if we want to be, because we found when we're on set, the stories we're telling are from when we used to go out, and we weren't living, right? So that's why in Johannesburg we were really, we had a good time. Had to do it. So basically now going out there and bumping into people in social situations, you'll find like a huge rugby guy comes up to me and just says, hey, Bwana, like that episode you said, and then he would say something that you would never expect someone of that stature to say, like, I watched this, I cried, it made me think of my dad, I called someone, and that happens so regularly. I think the one that really stands out for me, and this is a slight trigger warning, is there was a guy that came up to us and he said, you literally saved my life. I was gonna go the other way, right? And I remember Oscar was in the meeting and this guy was part of the team, like now the PR person. And he said that to Oscar, and Oscar had to, like, you know, hold in the emotions, because when you start something, when you're in the eye of the storm, you don't realize the impact you're having. So so this gentleman basically said that to him, and then I was meeting Oscar for coffee afterwards. I remember his face as he walked up to me, he just said, yo, and his eyes were like starting to water. It's like, we've done it. Like what we wanted to do is actually working. And so it's the most rewarding thing. So whenever we talk about sacrifices, money, it doesn't make sense sometimes. But like if you have the why, which we do, which is just trying to, we think every change starts with a conversation, right? So just trying to do that means that regardless of what happens, if you've started the conversation, you've seen a positive impact, all the sacrifices can keep coming, and
I mean, for me, it was the fact that I was able to speak about my anxiety for the first time ever anywhere, and the feedback that I got was ridiculous, because it was like, oh my God, I can't believe you're so well-spoken, all this energy, you know? And I mean, it was great. You guys are doing something so amazing.
Thank you,
but now when you're also doing great stuff, there's a lot of, sometimes it's wishy-washy. You just don't know, you know, because now the commercial part has to come in. So you're an amazing influencer, you are, you know, working with brands, and then, you know, you're sitting there and you're thinking, and you get an email, or you get a call, or you get a text, and you're told, so now we'd like to work with you on this brand called, the brand is called Eli Drinks. And it's, let me give a good example. Probably the brand is NTV, It's like NTV emails and the like. So what's up? So what are your rates? Before we begin with the shock that we saw on your social media, for anyone who's watching who you know is probably going to that kind of an email from anyone, it could be a baker, it could be a big time person, a small time person. What is the first thing you do? Obviously, apart from the times when you're being trying to con you, what should you do?
So firstly, be prepared, right? So off the bat, if you want to go into the space, I've only been here for a few years, there's people that have done it much longer, but the conversations we have about it is there's consistencies. So you have to be prepared when they come to you. So they're going to ask you for a few things. Number one, your rates, your insights, and then if you're reaching out to them, they'll ask for a proposal as to how your brand and they merge, so how I would work with NTV, right? So if they approach you and then you have to now go and start writing up a rate card, you're going to be panicking, you're going to not respond in the right frame of time. And then also just being really, really professional off the bat, because I think first impressions when they first reach out to you, how did you respond? Did you respond with everything they asked you for? So that's normally the first thing. They'll ask you for your rates, etc. And then now it's the negotiation.
The more we know, the more we don't know.
Exactly.
When we talk about when we talk about the digital age, we're now getting into opportunities that are available for us online. Opportunities that are available. I mean, this could literally be a talk on Spotify. It could be, you know. But then the more we know, the more we don't know. Because when people now are told rate cards, like you're saying, they panic. So you sort of literally started this literally very big pots
Yeah.
on social media when you decided to
Mm.
you decided to do what?
And I feel like I'm
No, it's
I feel
good.
like
I
I'm in
mean,
trouble. What did you do?
yeah, what did you do? No, it was a
No, I'm
good thing
joking.
because
Yeah,
it's those moments where you're like, you know what, Oscar?
Yeah.
Come to my staff room.
Yeah.
So how do you think we can deal with this issue? You know, you probably think you're in trouble,
Yeah,
but you did a good
it's true.
thing.
Thank
Yeah,
you, Mike. No, I'm joking. So, okay, basically, there's a thing about content creators. We're in the same space, same industry, but there's stuff of opaque nature, so to speak, right? So sometimes, like, you'll be in a group of influencers and you're all doing the same job, but nobody knows what everyone's getting paid for that job, unless maybe you're really close friends. So, perfect example. I was on a trip with some influencers, like 10 of us, and we just started at dinner talking about rates. Someone had a campaign, like, oh, I've got this campaign, what should I charge them? It's an international brand. And then when everyone started saying what they would charge them based on their rate card, the amount of shock in that room, I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
That was beginning of the year. And then I realized, because I'm now starting to kind of go into it full time, like, I'm putting much more effort into it and connecting with more people in that space. And the same thing kept happening. Like, no one really knows how much each of you are making. And then you've got the added thing of, like, now you're just seeing people's lives online. So you don't know where their money is sort of coming from. Are they full-time, etc.?
Exactly.
So after a lot of frustration, we realized that a lot of us were actually united in grief. So, like the example you gave,
like united in grief.
Someone will reach out and then you don't know how to respond, but you don't have anyone to talk to that can advise you. And I felt like I watched conversations online with some amazing thought leaders, but the thing that was missing was actual figures. So there'll be the theory, like, you know your worth, know your value, but like, what is my worth?
Have
what
a
is
rate
my
card
value?
ready.
Yeah, but like, what's the number?
Yeah, how does it even look like?
Exactly. So I sat there and I was really like spinning around my head. How can we do this in an efficient way? Because I know influencers don't want to put their thing out online and say, this is how much I make, because, you know, KRA is watching, right? So, honestly. So basically I said, let's make an anonymous link where you can now submit what your rates are and what your following is. Some of the feedback we've got is stuff we're now implementing, because obviously, as much as there's rates versus followers, there's also so many other aspects, right? Like engagement, are you niche, etc. So we're basically starting conversations around that in a very transparent way. And so what we've now done on my page personally is there's a highlight where you can now go and see if there's somebody similar to you, what are they charging? So if like we have the same following, I'm like, okay, you've now put yours in and like 5 other people with your following has. So you can now get some maths and now get some numbers as to, you know, what should I be charging if I have a similar
I mean,
following.
I screenshot one of them. It was like 113,000 followers. I've got 133,000. And so, and this person charges 80K for a reel. So me, I was like, I've charged the whole campaign 8,000. This one is a reel. Like one reel. And my campaign had for 4 reels a month.
Slavery, brother.
It was like,
that's slavery.
So, but how do you also advise anyone? I mean, who's who's watching? You know, I mean, the likes of Akina Ethan Muziki in the studio, the dancers who are going to come after, who are sort of starting off and they're thinking, okay, but now if I don't take the 50K, I mean, this and my biggest issue here also, I feel. And I don't want to gaslight anyone, but if you also have to speak to agencies who I feel a lot of times they are the, they sort of, they're the bridge, but they decide not to be the bridge. And also, and clients who, if they hear Eli charges 100K for a post, but Sauti Soul have got X number million followers, but they charge 50K for a post. I'm just giving an example. They'll be like, who does he think he is? And they probably go telling everyone, because one person moves from an agency to the next agency. So how do we ensure that even as we decide to standardize these figures, that we don't let work go?
So the thing with the numbers thing is we realize how much, like what you just mentioned, there is such a big gap. So I feel like step 1 is shrinking that gap. So at least, okay, if you're charging less, it's not like 3-4 times, right? And then also I feel like if people start all having this attitude of I can charge this certain amount, and then we have a collaborative conversation with brands, and they give us the realistic figures as to, okay, it's actually not possible, or is it just the case that you want to like save money and give it to like frequent people? So even when the conversation's starting, as much as we're informing the creators, as you mentioned about talking to brands as well, we want it to be a collaborative convo. We don't want it to be like us against you. We want it to be like, let's now elevate the industry in general by being transparent. Because perfect example again is like some of my buddies, they work in the industry. There's a videographer called Victor Miner, right? A really good friend of mine, and an example is we did a shoot for the podcast and the client paid what we wanted, and there's a reason we'd charge that, because Victor came with about 8 people in his crew. If we had not got that budget, we couldn't have employed those 8 people to come on that day. And
it won't look good.
It wouldn't look good. People in the creative industry are going to suffer because the cake's not being divided. So that's why on our side, we're like, yo, we need these budgets for a reason. We need this money for a reason. So we can keep getting better, because if you're just doing content creation to get by, you're not able to save and now invest back into your craft, then the whole industry is not going to elevate. So the whole point of the conversation is to be like, because we have amazing content creators out there. Like the level of content we have is international level. Exactly. And so we just feel like that should be matched, and that should be matched with the monetary that we get back. That's basically what we're trying to do. And we're actually encouraging brands and other guys on the other side of the table to come and talk to us, advise us, you know, how did we get to this place? Because there's 100% a problem. Just from the responses you saw, the range is far too high.
Exactly. So, I mean, a lot of times, for me, the advice I'd give is sometimes if you're quite sort of personal with the person who's on the other side of the line, be honest and say, and ask, I mean, what's your budget? Because I feel sometimes, I mean, you have to get to that point. And there's certain content creators who, like, there's a brand I worked in, they call Chicks Kapienga, because I saw her working with that brand. And she was very honest, and she said they don't have a specific figure. Quote, what do you think works for you?
Wow, and that's the transparency.
Be honest. I mean, don't just, you know, don't be the type of people to be like, Ati, how much? No, don't do that. Because they probably feel you're so confident. Why would you have that kind of money? And they probably will give you. Before we get into your personal mantra of movement, before we move to movement, let's talk about your sister, who's also doing great in the UK.
Yes, Rebecca.
And it feels to me like this is, like, she does content creation like 24/7. What are some of the sort of similarities and differences that you have sort of caught on from her, and you feel like if Kenya would sort of implement that, would probably be far off?
Yeah, so my sister is, I think, one of the best content creators I've ever seen. So she's called I Am Inkirote on Instagram, right? So
she's called what? I Am
Inkirote on Instagram. I Am Inkirote on Instagram. So basically, we both have been doing content for fun for coming up to like 6-7 years now. Started to take it seriously the last 3 years. For her, she made a jump. She was working in a creative agency, actually, behind the scenes. Then she said, actually, I want to now go fully into content creation. And luckily, it just coincided that she got signed by a management company. Now, where we're seeing the differences is now her being signed and then doing it in that industry and getting her worth, versus now me doing similar campaigns. We talk every single day, like, okay, how's this campaign going? I'm drafting this, what's their budget? And then the way that she's dealt with is just so much more efficient, so much quicker. And she's got such long-term amazing relationships because the management is transparent and even the brands are transparent. So she's been absolutely thriving in that environment. And sometimes when I tell her the things that we go through, or me personally, let me speak for myself, that I go through as a creative, which is sometimes like just blatant disrespect for the craft, right? Like the years you've put in, the audience you've built, and the consistency you've done, to be told like your fees are crazy, like by a professional, it's really disheartening. And then now to speak to my sister and she's saying, oh, this campaign went through without a hitch, right? And also I just feel like the speed that things are done over there, for her, she's been having such a nice time doing it and been able to enjoy her craft that she's doing. Whereas now when I speak to my peers here, there's, like I said, united in grief. There's so many like sad stories. Yes, there's incredible ones, people with long-term relationships, and there's amazing brands doing that, but a lot of us are just, we're frustrated. I'll be honest, really frustrated.
Here, I mean, when you see, I mean, when I check like vloggers in the UK, there's this one called Lydia Dinga. Sort of like building a, you know, sort of revamping her home and then buying a home. Like now she's got like a dream wedding. Kenyan vloggers, or you know, like social media guys, it's always like influencers, always like they're gonna have a haul, and then you're like, what? I'm waiting for the haul. Like.
Guilty. I'm guilty.
Promised us.
I'm guilty. I'm guilty. Yeah.
Because I think they realize, my pockets. I'm not doing a haul. We're gonna go. We're gonna go on a break. But as we go on that break, we're gonna play a video of yours.
Oh my. Okay.
Movement. And then when we come back, you tell us why this movement. Why movement?
Yes.
Is a big deal for you because you're always on the move.
Come on.
So I don't know if one of your biggest fans, Maggie, is our producer. If she's ready with that video as we go on a break. Sindio Maggie. Let's do this.
So, I'm turning 30 at the end of the week, and here are some thoughts before 30. When I look at the last decade, one of the words that really comes to mind in terms of lessons I've learned is movement. Movement has been key because the opposite of movement is to be stagnant. Whether that's moving country and not knowing how it's going to go, but taking that risk. Whether that's moving my mindset away from the typical narrative I've been served. Moving when it's the most scary has been the most rewarding. And stagnation has brought the most frustration in my life. Moving my body has also been key, and respecting its mobility and functions. So movement has been the word of the decade.